everyone for spending this foggy Friday morning with us. We're so grateful to be here and so thankful that Carmen is here with us. And Carmen Richardson is the founder and director of the Prairie Institute of Expressive Arts Therapy. She's a registered clinical social worker, a registered expressive arts therapist, and registered Canadian art therapist in private practice. She has her master's degree in clinical social work, her advanced diploma in art therapy, and her advanced postgraduate certificate in expressive arts therapy, consulting, and education at the European Graduate School. She lives in Calgary, Canada. So Carmen, thank you for being here today. We can't wait to learn from you, and so I'll let you just take it away.
Blessed are you who bear the light in unbearable times, who testify to its endurance amid the unendurable, who bear witness to its persistence when everything around seems in sadness and grief. Blessed are you in whom the light lives, in whom the brightness blazes. In your heart, a chapel, an altar, where in the deepest night can be seen the fire that shines forth in you in unaccountable faith, in stubborn hope, and in love that illumines every broken thing it finds. Blessed are you. Jan Richardson. Thank you so much, Erin, for having me, for welcoming. And I am very excited to be here and to share the bits of my journey, I guess, that can relate to this incredible creating that you are bringing forth in the world. I can't say that enough, how I am just having seen the floor plans, and then I watched the video of your new home being built and everything that's coming to fruition through, I am imagining, a tremendous amount of love and support and work and efforts on so many of your community's parts. So just thank you for allowing me to be part of this. So I am wondering if I can, I'm just going to start then the screen share, and I'll just bring up the PowerPoint. Okay. So I am beginning here with just a few of these images of where I am and what I'm looking out my window to this morning. I just felt to give some context of the light, and as we move into, I think, a time of more light in the world and in so many ways. And these are sunrise and sunset. And Erin, this is in dedication to you. These were two lovely moose this was, I think 2 years ago, they came on Christmas Day and had a little feast at the yard. So I just wanted to also share those to begin. And here we go. So we will, one quote that just in honor of the work that you all do. That time I thought I could not go any closer to grief without dying. I went closer, and I did not die. It's not the weight you carry, but how you carry it. Books, bricks, grief. It's all in the way you embrace it, balance it, carry it. When you cannot and would not put it down. It's from the poem Heavy by Mary Oliver. And so this morning I will look at, I've broke it down into the art space. So we'll look at room, storage, atmosphere of space. We'll look at art and materials, and then arts processes. And then I have some art invitations. And so, so I can't see anyone. So what I'm going to ask, I am open to questions as we go along. So you just let me know, Brad, when if there's a question and I need to slow down, or however that makes sense. I know we'll have time for question and answers at around 10:30. So yeah, but I welcome you as we go. So the first pieces that we'll look at is the art space. And I just want to highlight some of the considerations for art space. So I also just took some images that I found that can give examples of space, spaces that might give you ideas. So I really see this kind of as a springboard to ideas that you may have in your unique space, and how this might give some ideas about what's going to work for the people you serve and the space that you have. And so my hope is this, yes, that this is a springboard of ideas that we can move from. So we'll look at some of the things that I'm highlighting are, accessibility, so height of tables, set up for different ages. The floor, what's the floor made of, and just for easy cleanup. And I believe that there is a sink in the floor plan there, if I'm correct. Brad?
There is, Carmen.
Yeah, and what are the floors? Do you know what the material on the floors is?
I'm gonna ask Erin if she's right there to jump on, because she has the floor.
It's a vinyl. It's a vinyl that'll be easily cleaned.
So good, right? And that's just, it just helps to just the ease, and I think that also gives permission, like it's okay to make a mess, because that is really the idea with the art, that we don't have to be worried so much about it, something spilling, because it does, invariably will, and it is about permission for that. So and lighting, natural as much as possible. And I'll go through these as I show some images of the space, of different spaces. Again, just giving ideas around things like tables and arrangement of tables and walls, things that we can do on walls and how to set those things up. So, and cupboards. That's another sort of consideration is cupboards. Like, do we have open or closed? What about the materials? What do we do with materials? Do we have them available to be seen, or do we have more of a closed storage space? And shelves, places for art to dry. So those kinds of things. And if there's anything else that you want me to address, if I haven't covered it or it's not included in this, please do let me know. So I can imagine, I'm excited to see the space when it's finished and completed, and because I just the floor plan itself is just so welcoming and inviting as I looked it over, and so I mean I don't know that I'm going to say anything here that of course you haven't already considered, but the color schemes, this room. So I just pulled some of these are just images from the internet that I saw that I thought, well, these give examples. I have some of my own as well, but it's I think it's good to see a variety of spaces to also that help you can kind of bump up against, like, oh, this really doesn't fit this concept, but this would really fit, or we're kind of having these considerations. So that was my hope, not that this is the way it needs to be done, more this can give us an idea, this is a thread, or that this is not how we'd want to do it. So things, yeah, just considerations of the warm, the colors and the invitation. And I am imagining that for every space that is a consideration that you are making decisions about. And, you know, the walls, the lighting. Now, I'm not an interior designer, but I'm not sure what size of windows are in the space, but having the natural lighting is certainly always a lovely part of space, and to maximize that when possible. And plants are, again, I don't know if these are things that just in terms of atmosphere, and I guess that will flow with what you are already doing through your space. And you know, the space, I think that there's just a real continuum of, you know, keeping things, you know, I've seen rooms where they've been just completely bare, where it just people can move in. There's really no you know, nothing on the walls and so on, but just allows people to work from their own place without any I don't know, some people call it a distraction to have things on the walls, to having it's very cluttered in art spaces because of space, because sometimes we don't have the you know, the gift of having a lot of space in where we're working. So somewhere in that continuum of like even having an inspiring quote or images that we think that might just support the specific work that you're doing. And so the soft furnishings, I wanted to just talk about that. Again, I'm imagining in some of your spaces where you'd have the pillows and a area space with rugs and so on, or carpet, and I don't know if, again, there might be a space to be able to have a section where there's tables that can be worked on, but also an area where there is sort of a sharing circle. Like I see that too, because you'll be doing groups and you've been doing groups all the time, but a place where we can bring the art separate from the workspace is nice. And this is just all if there's the privilege of having that kind of space. Again, just ideas. And music, just having some music available. And that is also a really personal thing, depending on what the intention is. And I know you have a whole music room. This I was seeing as something that, you know, can there be music played in the background while people are creating art? Sometimes that is too triggering. Sometimes it's really needed. So there is no right or wrong. And I think each group, each age is of people you journey with will have a particular need. So, but just again, having that available to the space. So I'm going to just show some images. And I just invite you to notice what appeals and what doesn't appeal. Because I think that I really want to show a variety, not just, you know, really pretty spaces, but also spaces that are very in use. And this is what it can look like. And especially after we've been in spaces for some time, we collect a lot of things. And so then it's, what do we do with all those materials? What do we do with the art that's been created? And so we just, so again, if anyone wants to say anything about this, like just even as we go, please pipe in. But I look at this, and so when I think about space of tables, what kind of tables? So what are the considerations for tables? Again, easily clean. I'm always thinking about easy cleanup because that's going to be a key here with working with materials, and then how it's set up. You know, the size of our groups. So if we have small groups or if we have large groups, what does that look like? I like the groupings in, you know, if we have a lot of people, like sometimes the small group tables is nice to have, and it just creates a little more intimacy for people. And then in spaces like this, now I chose this one on the right. So these tables, again, they could be spread out, but it allows for a more circular form. And again, depending on, what the intention is in this particular group, and I like the idea of the circle, and that's just my bias. I think when we can create circles, that there is a sense of connection and being able to see each other. And so if possible, I do like that idea. And I have another one that I'll show. This one on the bottom left, I'm showing more of that. It's a different kind of a workspace, right, where they have a little higher tables and the chairs. And I wanted to show a lot of different options here just to have as considerations. I think about comfortableness, and I don't know that I would feel that comfortable myself in the chairs on the bottom left. But again, the ones on the right, they are, I know I have some of those myself for different groups, and they're okay for a while. And again, when we're doing art, it's not like we are sitting. Sometimes we're sitting for doing art, but then we can move to do sharing, depending on how our space is set up. So yes, let's see if there's any. Again, just more ideas of space. And this one, we're also like, I really take note too of the cupboard space and how things are set out. I know some of these images are not all that clear, but we start to look at even the open space of the cupboards. And so this is on the right there. There's a lot of materials. Well, on actually all of these images, the materials are out there. What I find sometimes is that it can be overwhelming to see a lot of materials. Again, depending on intention, I like the option of cupboards where they can be opened. So if we want that, we want to invite people to materials and to explore the different options of materials. It's lovely to have the cupboard where we can have the option of opening, but we also have the option then of closing, so that there isn't that, again, that sense of it being too overwhelming, because that can be certainly the case of in some spaces, and with some people it just might be too much.
Hey Carmen, it's Brad. I just can tell you, there's no questions, but just some comments about and some of the pictures, they feel the windows are too small. As you're talking, love the circles. Circles remind us of trust, friendship, celebration. And then someone just mentioned, yes, the top left is a little busy for me. So
that's so good. Thank you. Please let me know that, and because it's nice to have a discussion and for people to hear the comments, because that's what this is. That was my hope too, of that. Yeah. It's like, oh my goodness. Right. Yeah. So small. Go ahead. Sorry, Brad.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I'll keep watching the chat, and just when I see a couple comments, I'll pipe in. And
I have a quick question too, Carmen. This is Erin. So how our setup is we do have some natural light. We have a window, and then we also did a skylight that's kind of projected onto the wall. And so we added some natural light into the space that doesn't have as much natural light. We ended up having an electrical panel that had to go behind the art room, and so we weren't able to have a window where we were hoping to have a window. And so, but we do have a large storage area. It's open to a large storage area just adjacent to the art room. And so my thought was to put even some art supplies that would be even at a low level, so that the children wouldn't have to actually see them in their space while they were creating, but they could go grab what they needed kind of in an adjacent room. What do you think about that?
Love that. When I saw that part about that room that was off to the side for storage, that's so ideal. That is just so ideal. That it gives the option. And it doesn't have to take up the creating space.
Great.
And then to have it at eye level where little ones can see it, and there's, options, there's permissions around, and there's, guidelines around that for sure. But that's so nice that there is that space. And I think, is that where the music, the instruments might be as well?
Yes, so the instruments will be in there as well. So like one side instruments and the other side art supplies. And then we
Yes.
actually cut the top off of the wall. We'll just put some squares in so the natural light could go into the storage area so that they could, even have that natural light as they're selecting their supplies.
So thoughtful, right? Everything's done so thoughtfully. That's lovely. Yeah, yes. And I know it's sometimes, yes, looking for materials and the right colors. It's so nice to have that extra bit of the natural light. So yes, yes. And it takes that, because as you see in these art spaces, there is a lot of clutter, and that is, and again, it's not that it's a judgment, it's just that there's a lot of stuff. And so again, if we can have a space that's, I see it as calming as possible. There's enough going on inside that can be chaotic. And so if the outside is as calming as possible, that's just a beautiful offering. So yeah, and still have the option of accessing materials. So that's so good. I'm curious about your thoughts though too, Erin, around so this image is the table's more on the outside and then allows for an inner circle as well. What that is, I mean, again, with tables, we can have options to do lots of different things with the tables, whether they're in small little cohorts or whether there's a larger space where we can see each other. So, I mean, there's just again, to show the different options and then coming to the center of this look.
I love that. And we haven't purchased any furniture at all. So this is so helpful for us to really think about everything. And I was imagining some circular tables and some rectangular tables, just kind of like as options, and maybe even something we can move around, that if we wanted to create a circle in the room, we could.
It is nice to have that, isn't it? The option. So that if there's a particular reason that this group, we want it to, we want to make sure we don't have any tables, for example, or we want the circular tables, or it's so good if you can have those options available. Just gives more more flexibility for the need of the group.
That's great.
And then this I just threw in some of these, like the working on the floor, because sometimes that's what I was going to say little ones, but it's not just little ones, that people like to have that option of working on the floor. And so again, just spaces that we can create where, they can be working on the floor on top of paper. This is, these are just, picnic tablecloths that I threw down on because there was a carpet on this floor. And so for this group, we just threw those on the floor, and still we wanted to be in a small group doing the art on the floor. So again, just thinking of different options for that, like the ways we can do art, the spaces and the ways we can invite doing art. So sometimes it's important to be at a table to feel that security of the table. And sometimes it's nice to be grounded on the floor, doing things, moving. And then this next. Whoops, sorry, I just jumped ahead there. And then I also want to just speak about walls and the option of working on walls. Erin, has there been any discussion about that?
No, we have not discussed that, but I would love to hear your ideas. And everything is really a blank slate right now, so we have nothing planned inside that room. So I'd love to hear this to what your thoughts are about working on walls and what we need to have on there.
Okay, so this, I think there are many different options for walls. What I have seen, like, so this wall on the, so there's the top left, of course, the cork board. And you can make that any size. I do like the, if I were to design my ideal, my dream room, it would be to have the full wall, like to the bottom. So because some pieces, as you see on the bottom right, they go right to the bottom. And so those are really great for full body outlines if you're doing outline work, or just full large images. And there is the, I'm sure some people are like, oh my goodness, like look at the floor, and that floor on the bottom right there. I know she does, the art therapist that does that work, she has this room that is just for doing that, and having the floors can be a mess, and that's what they're for. So, but there are things that you can put on the floor so that it's it preserves the floor as well to some degree, and but having that option of working on walls, I feel would be in my dream space for sure. And again, like I said, the full wall. It's a place where we can, as you see, some of like the cork board is used for displaying, but it can also be. I'll just show the next. Oh, here's one. The next image. So again, I'm not sure what the material is in that top picture on the right. They have some kind of bulletin board there of putting up images. The other option, as you see in the bottom one, is easels. I find them a little more cumbersome to work with, but my preference still is the wall to an easel, to have a bunch of easels to set up. And I like the ease of having the wall available, and but some people like the easel as well. So it's just, again, options. I don't see it as a right and a wrong. I'm curious, I don't know about the material in this bottom one that they've got there. It looks like you can pull that out. So, and also just the wall, you can close it back up. So I'm not sure of that. There could be more research on those things, but just the idea though of being able to work upright. Has that been done at all, like in your space, in your current spaces?
Carmen, we've had some easels and we've done that, and but not anything that's specifically where we've put paper on a wall. But I love that idea. It seems like we could even do like a whiteboard material behind it, so that it could be just easily wiped with paint or whatever, you know, material they're using. And so I love that. We're getting a really good comment from Donna here. And one of our volunteers, she said, perhaps rolls of paper could be hung above and along the walls, offering wall art. This would support ease in pulling paper down and positioning it for use. Such a great idea, Donna.
Yes, right. And then there's all the material. Yes, like getting the rolls and having that available. Yes, love it. The this, I'll just show you this now. So when I, in my own art room, this is one of my training rooms that I had to sort of convert into an art space. So this is, my husband put this together and we use ceiling tile. So ceiling tile is lovely because you can put the pins in. We don't use tape, we just pin it, and it holds well enough. And then you just put some wood trim so those ceiling panels can slide in and out if they need to be changed out or not. And so I just wanted to show sort of some images of how this looks in use. So people doing their work upright on the, The thing again, I would have preferred it full length. So as you see, people are still working full length. And then I think on this one, yeah, sometimes we can put paper because it is carpet, but I'm okay with it getting materials on it or paints. But we sometimes will put like the tablecloth underneath or just another large sheet of paper to catch the drips. And it can be used like this. I think that's another idea, just doing group art, right? Doing the murals and having that available. And just seeing it up. And then I like that the marks stay there. And in fact, I want to share. So in the space that I have a small, like an art therapy office, and in my space, so I have been in that particular space for 12 years. And this is a young person. She was 7 at the time when she started, and that's just 2 ceiling tiles together. And I've known her now for a lot of years. So this is when she was 7. And then this is when she was 11. And this is this year, and she is 16. So I show that to show the holding up of the ceiling tile over time. And what is really kind of cool, it becomes just part of people think it's actually a piece of art, and I do call it my community art piece because people who work up at that leave a mark behind. So I quite like that idea in that space. And it's small, so that's just for a small space. And again, just getting ideas. I like having the little board underneath, and I put the paints on in small jars. I have big jugs of paint, and then I just pour into the small mason jars so that I have that available, and they just have their big container of brushes and some water, and as you can see on the right there, and and do their work.
Hey, Carmen, I was just going to ask,
Yes.
I'm assuming that the floor is that just rubberized little tiles that connect together. That's an obviously very inexpensive way to change out a messy floor. It kind of looks like a time lapse, obviously from the left to the right, and the floor changes. I noticed that could be something that is in those spots because we realize paint's going to drip. We realize paint's going to not get picked up because the busyness of a night. So I just saw that, thought, ooh, that's a cheap way to change out floor and protect what's really underneath.
Thank you. Yes, yes, yes. I have hardwood floors, and so I do. Those are so great, these little interconnectors, and yes, I have swapped them out over time because they do get really dirty, and I love that. Like the wall gets full of paint, I can repaint the wall as needed if I want. But I also like it because that wall is just for the painting. I like keeping it full of spots, just because again, that's kind of like permission. It's okay if there's some splatter, and not to be uptight about that. And but yes, but that is it is helpful just for ease of clean and swapping out over time. Thanks for bringing it to mention that as well. Yes, yes. And then just other ideas around storage. Again, you'll have the ideas of how you will have that room, that storage room. And I put this one, when I saw this image in the bottom left, it was like, oh my gosh, I totally have the feel of overwhelm in that space. And so it's good to just see that and then see kind of order and see ideas about how do we create space, and what are some ideas around that. And so I do like the little cubes of having like the separate storage with the baskets as well. I think that's helpful just with ease if wanting to pull something out. and taking a box of materials that's maybe all about oil pastels, for example, and wanting to have options, and then it's easy to put it back in. So you can take that right out, take it into the next room, use it. The other storage idea, that this on the bottom right, there is a it's a little trolley like this. So, and that's also kind of handy if there are certain things like that we want to pull into the main room, then it can all be there and maybe have access to. So and again, it depends on what kind of arts are being done and what's needed, but it's just, again, another option of ease of bringing into the space, having access right there, and then putting it back. So that might be something. And deciding what is it that we want to have that option. Maybe we change that out too. If we know if there's a group coming and we're going to be creating figures like doll figures and so on. And then there's all these embellishments, because embellishments are often like lots of little things, little pieces of things. And so that's a nice way of bringing that out into the space, and those drawers can come right out. So yeah, just again, some ideas, the rollaways, and just in terms of storage. So here, that is the space that I have for one of my training rooms. And I put on the right-hand side, I kept in the image where people are in, so you could see what it's like with people in it, not just, so this, I like having the baskets, putting all the materials that it can be seen, but it's somewhat away as well. So the clear covered plastic containers, I put all different materials, natural materials in, yarns, material, actual cloth materials, different things, and have them there so that, again, that they can be seen as options, but still not direct, not having to clutter up the space too much. This woman does a lot of scrapbooking, as you can probably tell. So she has a small space, but she uses it quite efficiently and has a ton of like pretty good materials. And so I just wanted to show that as, with small spaces, again, just ideas. And she's got the mat on the floor for pickup there. I think those are for the when we have an office chair kind of material, so that easy for cleanup if you've got carpet down. And but yeah, that's a lot of materials. So, and so in my space, I have a sitting area, so I can have we can be away from doing the art in the same space. Then I have, so that's, yeah, anyways, that's very cluttered at that point. It's a little bit different now, especially now that with COVID, we've had to really rethink spaces too, and materials. And so, but anyways, but in this, it's a smaller space, but I have at least some sort of set of idea of having the art space with the sink. I am so glad that I have a sink. I know some of my colleagues who don't have a sink, I feel so grateful to have the sink. So, to do this work and to see that your sink was there is just such a great thing. So, okay, I'll move on to art materials, but I want to just check in if there are any questions about that at this point, if there's anything, Brad. I'll just move on to some of the art materials. And so this, I just met the woman who is looking after some of the art materials, and now I'm just forgetting your name. I'm so sorry. But anyways, I just thought you might have some comments here too, or questions or ideas to throw in. But I thought I would just talk about things that I find that have been really helpful in having this kind of a base and offerings. And again, it's, if we sometimes need specific materials if we're doing a particular project, but in general, so I'm talking sort of in general, things that are really good to have on hand. Again, the plastic tablecloths and placemats are really handy just for doing, for so many things, to protect the floor, but they're easily picked up and put away, and so on. The freezer paper rolls, that can be, like those can be used for murals, but they can be used also for just protecting floors underneath spaces. Aprons. Aprons are really helpful, and some people really appreciate having the option of having an apron available to protect their clothes. And some don't. I have young people who come and they are in their art making clothes, and so it's kind of part of their identity anyways, and they just don't mind that. But it's just nice to have that as an option. Again, for rolling carts for some materials. So if you do have a particular project and maybe you want to go to the back, the storage room and have your rolling cart and grabbing some things and pulling that out so it's in the cart, and maybe you add it to the tables and so on. So just again, ideas for even access to the materials. So plastic containers, if people start collecting, I'm sure if you put a call out, you would within a week have enough materials for things like margarine containers and so on, for brushes and yogurt containers. Actually, yogurt containers are really nice because they're a little taller for just popping in the art brushes, and see-through containers. And those are, I was thinking what I meant by that one was more of the kind for the storage. So when I have like I have a lot of the plastic see-throughs so that I know what's in them too. Of course, we can always mark them, but it's nice to be able to see what you have in the containers. And the turntables. So that's nice to have with if you have a circle, the round tables, and then just having the turntable in the center with materials on it so people can look and share materials, but have that little turntable at the center. I asked some of my colleagues too what were some of their go-to materials as I was preparing for this, and one woman said that she says, I always have a small bell, or just I think of some kind of instrument where you can just sound it. That it's just a signal that, oh, we have 10 minutes left, or just some of those things. So it's again depending on what ambiance, I guess, the way that you want to create. And it's just a nice quiet way of saying we've got 10 minutes, or can let them know. So I wanted to include that. Other art materials. So cardboard like boxes and shoes and jewelry boxes, having lots of different sizes. The boxes are lovely to begin like any kind of a project. You can do all kinds of things, and and kids are imaginative, and so just given options of these kind of just materials where doesn't have to be bought, but that they can use their imagination and allow it to really come to life in using all kinds of materials, tins and jars as well. And so this is where like storage does become kind of essential, and it really is in organizing the space for that, because I think it can become overwhelming, but it is, I think having some of these things is really lovely to have to play with. And as I said, different sizes of cardboard boxes. Cardboard is also great for underneath, like if I'm using clay, I cut up a lot of cardboard boxes just to small sizes where I can put it underneath, and they can use that to work with the clay on, because that also can be reused, because the clay dries really nice and just can be wiped off. And so that can be used over time, but it's also recyclable. And so other materials like yarn, strings and ribbons and twine, embellishments, the pipe cleaners, the buttons, glass stones, just some ideas of these kinds of things. And even putting a call out to people who have perhaps materials that they'd like to donate, you know, that there's all kinds of things that can be used in art making. And so we can have a miscellaneous bin. I like having that, you know, a bin where it's like just miscellaneous. And so it can be, I find that some people really like, that's a go-to. So even I used to have like a garbage can, a plastic garbage can, and just putting things in, and kids loved going through that bin to find little treasures of things that they could use in their art making and include. The thing I really want to emphasize is natural materials. That is really, to me, the way to go. There is something so lovely that happens with making art with natural materials. So having things like moss, pine cones, different kind of rocks and stones and sticks, driftwood, twigs, shells, the dried leaves, flowers, dried flowers and feathers. And every fall I have, when my husband goes to prune, I make sure that he keeps a lot of the the sticks and so on from the trees that I can use. And those are some of the things, like, people gravitate towards the natural materials. There seems to be a real a need to be in nature, and we aren't in nature enough, you know, as a just sort of overall. And so there is something about connecting with the natural materials with art making, to include it in art making. I dried in the fall when the leaves were turning this year. I went around and gathered all kinds of different leaves. And I have another colleague who, in her garden, she collects all her dried flowers. So in the fall, like, she'll just, or once the flower starts to die off, she'll just pick the flowers, dry them, and then she creates her own potpourri. And those can be, if they're just kept in a Ziploc, they last a long time as well, and can be just used in different art making projects. And so other just basics. So this might just be obvious, but I thought I'll just include this, and it will be in your notes. So just, again, however, hopefully it can just be a resource. The things, just your basic things, the markers, pencil crayons, oil and chalk pastels, rulers, scissors, sponges. And the sponges can be used in, like, with painting. So, you know, the natural sponges, or just dollar store sponges for that matter, and they can be cut up, and when they're wet and dipped in a little bit of water or paints, can be used to create art. The glue sticks, glue guns, just some real basic materials, paints, of course. Around paints, watercolor is really beautiful to use. I think the tempera is the most accessible, just, again, also for cleanup as well, because it's water-based. And so, but finger paints and having special finger paint paper. I've had people who just they don't want the special finger paint paper, they just want to do it on regular paper and use regular paints. And that's fine. It stains a little bit more on their hands, but they can have that choice. But the finger paints themselves are, and on the finger paint paper is so fluid. And it's like, it can be a more embodied experience in using the finger paints and that particular kind of paper. So that's I think would be sort of on my list. I think of the young people that have used that, and in particular with some of the themes that you are working with around grief and loss and so on, and trauma, that those are really kind of important materials. So then the different kinds of brushes and mixing trays, and mixing these, I guess I think about being economical as well, and we can use the lids of the yogurt container or the margarine container. Those can be mixing trays. We don't have to have, you know, buy all the materials from an art store. And I just gotta say, we have the Dollaramas or dollar stores that have a lot of materials that are actually really good. I would get my oil pastels from Dollarama, and a beautiful set of oil pastels, and actually really decent quality. I would for $2, and I was so surprised. So whenever I see them, because they're not always there, that if you find a material that you like, you need to get what you can at the time, because sometimes they carry certain things for you know, for a time, and then they stop carrying them. So I just, yeah, but the oil pastels and different things from Dollaramas or dollar stores, it's quite easy, good to access. And then what else did I want to say about that? Just, oh, acrylic paint. So I wanted to say, although acrylic paints are, because they're not, yeah, they're a little tougher with the cleaning, but really there are things that I like for the acrylics. Like if we're going to be working on wood, to paint on wood, the acrylics are great. On canvas, on metal, fabric, and stones. So if we're doing work, if we're going to be painting rocks and stones, the acrylics are really good to have for painting. So they have their place. They all have their place. And then paper. I have, my husband works for an architect firm, and so I have so much paper, and I use recycled paper. I love that. I have huge sizes, and I have the smaller sizes and rolls of that. I don't know if you can access an architect firm, and I know that is becoming less. They're doing more digital work, but I think there still is the paper work. So anyways, if you can find or at the local paper maybe has some newsprints and so on, but just being able to get materials like that from organizations who have materials to recycle around paper. Yeah, watercolor, of course, is a specific, or finger paint paper, but it isn't like, for me, that it's not necessary to buy all these different kinds. I think just having, you know, if you do have access to recycled paper, that's, I think, really good. Also, like, I guess just to speak about the canvas, dollar stores have a lot of different kinds of canvas materials, and really decent, at really good prices. And so sometimes we do want to have a canvas for someone to work on, or they might choose that. So again, just having options. And if there's a particular, like I said, if there's a particular project, we might want to buy particular materials. And so clays, modeling clay, sculpting clay, Model Magic, plasticine. Again, dollar stores have plasticines and different modeling clays available. And I also buy a box of clay that I get at a ceramic shop, and it's for, of course, it's for kiln drying clay, but it doesn't need to be. It air dries as well. So I do like that because it's quite economical for a big, like a 40-pound box. It's really a reasonable price. So I find that, and it's also, it comes in different colors. Like there's the grays, but there's the red kind of, we call it terracotta. I really love having that because it also has the smell of the earth. There's something very sensual about using that kind of clay versus like plasticine that's more plasticky smelling. And just simple, like for the clay, I just have like simple tools, just simple sculpting tools And we can use things that we have as well, like, you know, if we have toothpicks and different things that can make impressions. I do find having the wire for cutting really important with any, if we're doing the larger clay boxes. Yeah, so, but with all of that, I want to make a comment, and this is dedicated more to really making a decision to be intentional about materials. So I think that there's more of an idea of like really being more environmentally friendly. And especially, I think art therapists really, like, I think about some of the, I'm doing more of my own research around the, trying to understand more about, you know, what happens with the paint. So if we're using paint and it goes into I'm dumping it down the sink, and then, so anyways, it feels like it's still a dilemma for me, to just be honest. I just find that really, I'm trying more to be more intentional around natural materials, because what I'm finding, even in the trainings, that people really gravitate to the natural materials. So I think just if you're in a place, you're in this beautiful beginning place of being able to gather things and to be intentional about what is it that we want to bring into our space and have for our people to be using. But having the idea of the reuse, recycle, repurpose, reduce, and having that in mind as we start to gather materials. So there's just, I think, again, it's not all or nothing. I think like we have to completely throw out every art material that is, but we can make choices about what's important. And a few other ideas about just art materials, having old books. I have stacks of old books that they're great because you can actually use them for journal making. And that's a whole process of journal making and using gesso and covering the pages and then reusing them, gluing some together and making thick pages and then doing art in them, and like using them for blackout poetry, where you're just out, you know, covering up, using a black marker to cover up all the words except for certain words and creating poems out of that's called blackout poetry. So old books are really great ideas for recycling. And then again, I just already spoke about that, the recycled paper. And cardboard has lots of uses. The repurposed boxes versus buying new materials. And so wood materials, I find that the dollar stores have really great wood materials. And so wooden boxes, but wooden puzzles, just lots of wooden materials. And they're great to paint on and to draw on as well. And just, I wanted to say a little bit about sort of ephemeral or transitional art projects. So it's more like these are transitory, they're not permanent. And so this gets us more moving into art processes, but for example, creating mandalas with natural materials, like beans. So even having jars of, you know, uncooked kidney beans and all the different kind of beans or pastas, and stones, and creating nature altars. And I'll just maybe show a few slides of that. Yes, that they're not permanent, and there's a lot of lessons to me around that, really the art of impermanence and that movement. So sometimes I've had in different groups and trainings, we go out into the yard and we will create little nature altars or nature mandalas or whatever. And so just using whatever materials that we can find and creating these objects and sharing them. And then we can then create a poem from them, or maybe a word or a line, and we witness each other's work. So this was a little art project one young person made in the yard. I took this one because I wanted to, this was years ago, I had I was in Guatemala at Easter time, and so in Holy Week it's called alfombras, and they create out of sawdust and they add paint, and they create these incredible art pieces all through the streets. And then as they begin the service, then they walk actually through these art pieces. So they're impermanent, but they spend, if I understand it correctly, I think they start, I don't know how many days before the night, before they work on into the night. And there's a lot of love and effort put into creating these beautiful pieces. And then they're gone after the procession, the Holy Week procession. So the arts processes, oh my goodness, I could spend a whole day on this because I love this part. As I entering the space, but I would also say, as I thought about this, is entering and exiting the space. And so when we're creating these are, I call them invitations, and when we're inviting people to express through art, that we create a way of entering the space and a way of exiting that can be, it can be just small little rituals, honoring rituals of, like for example, just lighting the candle this morning just felt really important, just that marking the beginning of something and the closing of something. And so, and I think there's something about the comfort and safety, the continuity, there's something predictable about it that just marks like, oh, we are entering into a different space now. This is different than out here. We come into the space and this is different. And it just helps us even just sort of reorient our minds and our bodies towards this space and this time now. And just simple, I mean, this is just a few little ideas of that, the lighting candles, blowing them out, that invitation to center, breathe, become present. We can have maybe little wishes, little intentions, or a prayer basket. And maybe we have a basket that when we come into this space, and maybe just a way of maybe it's even a little basket of what I want to let go of when I enter here, or what I want to hold in my heart, an intention. At one time I had a tree on the back of my door, and so when we enter the space, then we would just put, I used it for different reasons at different times, but little wishes, or who you're caring for right now, or holding in your heart right now, and you can acknowledge through a little drawing or something and attach it to the tree. But a little basket is more personal and it's private, and so we can put a little paper in there, or cut out little hearts and put the heart in the basket. We can have at the beginning just a small movement, or stretching, and just kind of getting into our bodies and noticing our bodies and our breath. Little beginnings can be with poems or stories or song or lyrics. So just that entering and exiting space. And I think of those of you who are journeying with others, that we bring forward this idea of wise witness, how to be with those we journey with. How is it? And I'm imagining already you do this and you bring this, these ideas of presence. And how do we hold space? How do we hold space for those who come to our sacred space? And I can't say enough about silence, that sometimes we think we have to have the right thing to say, and oh, am I going to say the right thing? And I just think holding space means also, I am here. And my silence also, when we show up more than just with words. We show up with everything that we are, how we make contact, just energetically, and with our body, with our attention. And so, and we can ask, and I think this is important, we can ask, how do you need me to be with you? And so sometimes there was a question I think Erin had just about, what do we do when, even when maybe the group is creating art, like what do we do? Or if we're in a smaller group, and do we do art? We can do art alongside. And I think there's some pros and cons to that. It depends on the group, and it depends on you. if I'm doing art, I sometimes find that I can get just caught into it because art just brings us into it. It can bring us into a flow and being in another sort of mindset. And so if I know I'm with someone and they need me to sort of be doing something else as well, because sometimes there's just that feel like that, and they let me know, and I love that too. And so I'll bring something, or I might have something that I'm working on that isn't going to take me into really creating, having to think about my art. And so it might be just a coloring. I have my little coloring for mindfulness booklets that, I think everyone has. But anyway, so something that just, if we need to be doing something alongside. And sometimes we just are there. And I find with you, because the arts they're so tangible, and we can always be doing something with materials, like just, cleaning things and bringing things and helping out if they need help. So I find that I'm more often doing that than doing my own art, but they can let us know. And yeah, so the trusting, they will teach us. And so I'm not sure if this is at all relevant, but I just wanted to say, when we move into the arts, for a lot of people have all kinds of ideas about their own creativity. And so I really like this idea of offering permission statements. Like, we don't need to be artists or musicians or dancers to be able to create art or to move or to sing. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. Let's just explore materials. What if we're just kind of explorers here and going to check out the materials. So I think when we are listening, we will know is there a permission statement that's needed here. And sometimes it's just a relief to know, oh, right, I don't have to create a pretty thing. It's just about exploring. It's about expressing. So I think that's really key. Another way of being with art is I call it just working intermodally. And intermodal art, expressive arts, is really just doing one art form and then doing another art form. So for example, maybe there has been this image that's been created, and then is there a story or a poem that goes with your picture? Is there a sound, a song? Is there a movement? And so just giving permission, again, even to ask that question, just that invitation, because that, again, that deepens the art experience. It deepens the story. So although this is what I express through my image, the words take us even into a more, it can offer even more understanding or what I'm living inside. So that's what I mean by the second modality that we can invite. And I don't know if you get into the questions, if just even as you process the art. So I might just save this one and maybe I'll connect. There's other ones that I know for sure that I think will be relevant. But what I will say that in the handout, I included, I have in my book on expressive arts and trauma, I have an appendix, and this is in that. So this is from there. So it's called questions that connect to the process of the art, questions that connect to art. And so if we're working with people and we are wanting to know, oh, maybe there is a question that we just want to connect with, and this just gives ideas of the different ways we can go with questions. And so I'll leave that at that for now. I want to speak about art responses. So art responses are simply, it's an authentic artistic expression. So as facilitator, so I'm imagining, so again, you will see how this fits for your processes and in your groups, and if this fits at all. And I'm imagining if you're having a group, a family group together, how when you're sharing art, so I'm going to try and use that as an example. So if you have a family and they've all created art, and when one person is sharing their art, one of the things that we can do is we can slow down the process by really listening to what that person has shared, and then invite the other family members to create an art response. So what this does is it stops the talk that can happen, like, or like asking like, oh, what does that mean or this mean? But if we're invited to respond using another art form or creating art, so if I have witnessed the creation of, let's say this image on a stone, and I'm hearing the story, then I might take some paper and I'm going to do another image of how I am moved by your story. And it might be a poem. Maybe it's words that how I am moved by what I've just heard. So an art response is that they come from a compassionate place of witnessing. They offer the gift of presence, that I see you and I hear you, and the potential to increase attunement in these relationships. We can also, as facilitator, also create art responses. And so the act of, so crafting one, how do we create one? They're just simple acts of acknowledgement. They don't have to be big things. They can just be really simple, unique, any of the art forms. It might even be if we have a drum, it's like how I moved and here's the sound. And I'm going to just beat to the heartbeat of my drum. And we're mindful of, why am I offering this? What is it that I want this person to know how I moved? And we create them when we are moved. We can create them as a symbol of hope, a show of empathy, or it can be a way of closing of the space that we all create, do an art response. And again, we can say, we have 5 minutes to do an art response. And when we give a time limit, I know that can be stressful, but actually it is a restriction that can be helpful, because we're always working with restrictions in any of the arts. But we can say we have 5 minutes, and actually it takes the pressure off that I have to create something really elaborate. It could be, this is simple, and we'll just create in the space and time that we have. And we can, so again, we can invite others to create this, our caregivers, if they're involved, depending on the groups or group members, or as facilitators as well. And I'm just going to share this slide. This is from a group I did with adolescents who had severe trauma. And so the group is called Warrior Girl Spirit. And they, so the girls would tell their story through art, and then the rest of the girls would then do an art response. So I had a table of all materials, that the art making materials. So they would listen to the story, and instead of talking and saying anything, they would go to materials, they would create an art response, and then that was offered to that person. So they actually gave it to the person who shared that story that evening. So these are just some of the responses. This one was a warrior shield, an offering as she witnessed the young person's strength and power. One gal shared her story through, she created her own song and played her guitar and brought that. One wrote a story. And so as the rest of the girls were listening to those stories, this was their art response for some of them. And then this one was an art response because she took a line from the girl's story, We Find Light Together. She created the dolls, and this is her art response of how she was moved by hearing her story. And then she offered that to the young person who told her story. So those are gifts. And I know I've got about 5 minutes or so. There's a few more things. I just want to say the ear of the heart listening, because I feel like this is so key. And we could just do a whole time of just how we show up, how we listen, how we offer presence, that we are listening to the other to completion, that we are hearing beyond the words as we witness how the body speaks in movement and tone and energy, and that we show up with presence, eagerness, and love. And our body communicates in so many ways that I am with you, keep going. You have to always use our words. And it reminds me of Mark Nepo, who wrote, to listen is to continually give up all expectation and give ourselves completely and freshly to what is before us, not really knowing what we will hear or what that will mean. And in the practice of our days, to listen is to lean in softly with a willingness to be changed by what we hear. So I just chose 5 art invitations that I think that you can really gear to what it is, what's your intention in that group space. So if there's a theme, and so I think any of these that I've chosen, there you can form the theme around this invitation. So I'm giving kind of a structure, but then the theme can be whatever you need it to be. So I'll just give some ideas. Grief story sticks. So with this invitation, again, you might ask, like, what's our focus here? But I will tell you, creating sticks of any kind, and you can fashion this in a way that is relevant and meaningful to your group. But for example, if we were wanting to explore what's my story, my grief story right now, like where I am right now. And using the natural materials is there's just something so healing about that. And so if you were to show an aspect of your grief story through these materials, what are you moved to create? So that might just be the invitation. Where are you today? We might also start with, I like sometimes just starting with a prompt. So even taking, my grief is like, ... So I just keep going. My grief is like a raging storm, and I'm in the river, blah, 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 whatever. And just then go, my grief is like, and keep going and keep going. My grief is like, my grief is like, and just using that as an initial prompt to get into that more, first of all, the creative part of our brain, but also into the experience, and then going to the materials. And what does my grief look like? And creating a story stick. And on the other side of that, then can also be hope wands, or what, again, it could be nature wands, helping, wishing wands, and using the same prompt or like a similar prompt is, my hope is like the wings I wish I had or am working for or working towards, and then embodying that through the creating another stick or wand. And this is one I did, and I have here my own, and I chose because poetry is so important to me that I took a line from a Mary Oliver poem, "What wild song is singing itself through you?" And then, so this is just paint, putting paint on there and then just writing in whatever. I mean, this is just, this one, what I really thought was cool is drilling holes into these, and then you can attach materials. And this is like twine and yarn, and then a little string of beads, and creating that. I love this. I take this with me at different places, and I have it at home sometimes. And then if I'm doing a training, and we're encouraged to use these. So it's one thing to make them, but then to help talk about the ideas of what we can do with them. Okay, I could get so caught into all of these, so I'm going to keep going. There's my story stick there in my office, and I have it there. Weaving prayers. So these are little, they're called Ojos Studio, and I'm sure there are people here already that know more about this, but the Huilco culture in Mexico, they create these little weavings. And I started using these a lot in my work probably just over the last year, in all kinds of ways. I love these. They are simple to learn, just to learn how to do them. You can just on YouTube, Ojos Dios, and there's all kinds of little videos to show how to make them. But making them, I have a whole basket. I was meant to bring them this morning, but anyways, they're like making small ones and to creating large ones. So this one back here is a large one, and I have a bigger one. But the process, so what I have, sometimes you can have like families that can create one, but they can take turns weaving the different colors of yarn, the center. There can be maybe for the one who is lost, who has died, they can create a core piece of a color for that person, and then everyone else in the family, or however. One little gal created the same, she made 4 of them, and she made sure that she had them for her parents had divorced, and so she wanted some at her dad's place and some at her mom's, the same one, that she would remember her family in that. So there's all kinds of ways that they can be used. But when they're weaving, the invitation is to intentionally think, pray, meditate, whatever their version is, or the meaning is for them, for someone who's died or someone they're concerned for. And then these can be hung outside as well. And just the idea of allowing the wind to carry the prayers into the world. However, the meaning, you can shift that up to create space. And then these were, like this one was, again, the materials, just lots of twigs from my yard, and then being able to use all kinds of different yarn. Like people have all kinds of scraps of yarn, those can be donated. These just make such beautiful pieces. And then I did this, I just had a long stick, and then I hung them. I hung the small ones, and each of those have a meaning for me. And so again, the imagination, you can just go with how you might use that. And I wanted to show this because I did not that I want to show you my picture, but I wanted to show you, this was a weaving, and I did a keynote. Oops, that's not where I wanted. Sorry, whoa, I'm coming back. I did a keynote, and there were a lot, it was a large group, but we had everyone in the group, there were over 200 people, and they all made their own. I had made little balls of yarn. Anyways, I won't go into all the process, but everyone made a small one, and they had created an intention and for the theme of that conference. And then we made a big web. So that's why I showed the one with all of us there. We made a big frame with big sticks of wood, and then just like a web and attached, and just again, the meaning, because the whole meaning was weaving connection in this conference. So that was really lovely. And then these are, again, just the different sizes that can be made and how they can be hung. So anyways, that's the weaving prayers. Another idea of grief island, hope island, and the bridge in between. So just having, and this can be done as either individually or in groups, like if we were on Grief Island, what does it look like? What's all there? We can actually just include materials and actually create an installation. It doesn't have to be a painted or drawn thing. It can be like, if we have all these found objects, for example, and we have this bin of found objects, we can put them, like, what does our Grief Island look like? What does Hope Island look like? And what's the bridge? What would the bridge be made out of? And where are we in this process? And what does it look like? And so that can be taken in lots of, as well, in different ways. And the grief dolls or figures, and the healing figures, the grief figure, it just can embody the suffering and pain associated with grief, and allows others to witness and to witness where we are. And these are made out of their cloth bendy dolls, and I ordered from the internet, and I think Michael's might have some too, but they come in all kinds of sizes, but we can invite, like, to show me the grief. And when we do that, like, we can show through all kinds of art materials, but when it's a figure, there's something else that happens because it's far more personal. And this was her grief doll figure. And then there, however, words that you want to use, this is my healing self, or this is my hope figure. And she created her little bag of miracles that she would take, and her little cat next to her, and another little image of her healing doll. I don't know if you can see that one so much, but this young gal, she created a little bag, and she put these little hearts in it because her mom had passed away, and she had to, so she kept her mom's heart, her grandma who's raising her, and her heart all in that bag. And this was the keeper of the hearts. So again, this is just an invitation, and that you shifted to your themes. And I want to end with this beautiful quote. Erin, we would never consider ourselves grief experts. We really believe that individuals and families are the ones who are experts in their own experience, in their own life and experiences, their own grief and experiences. Grief is a natural reaction to loss, and it is different for every person. Our job is to come along and let them teach us what they need. So we do a lot of reflection, listening, to create a very safe environment. And I found that quote, Erin, and I just felt like that was such a perfect closure of to this piece. And so, because it's really kind of pulls it all together. It's at the core of that. And if I can, I just would like, I know we'll take some questions, but I'm going to close this part with just blowing out my candle. And I want to just close with another poem by Jan Richardson, Blessings in the Chaos. To all that is chaotic in you, let there come silence. Let there be a calming of the clamoring, a stilling of the voices that have had their claim on you, that have made their home in you, that go with you even to the holy places, but will not let you rest, will not let you hear your life with wholeness or feel the grace that fashioned you. Let what distracts you cease. Let what divides you cease. And let there come, and let there come an end to what diminishes and demeans, and let depart all that keeps you in the cage. Let there be an opening into the quiet that lies beneath the chaos. Lies beneath the chaos, where you find the peace you did not think possible. And you see what it shimmers within the storm.
Carmen, thank you. Thank you. We learned so much today. It was exactly what we needed to cover our spaces and questions and deepening of practices, and just so beautiful. And